Welcome to On Cloud, the podcast for cloud professionals, where we break down the state of cloud computing today and how you can unleash the power of cloud for your enterprise. Now, here's your host, David Linthicum.
Welcome back to the On Cloud podcast. Today in the show, I am joined by George Richardson, founder and CEO of AeroCloud. George, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, what I love about this show and having you as a guest is you come prepared to not only talk about technology, which a lot of people can do, but also a particular use case that I think is going to be of interest to the listeners. So I'm really happy to kind of take you through that. But first, let's kind of figure out who you are, where'd you come from, how'd you end up working where you're working now, and what's your journey been like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been around sort of the entrepreneurial spirit for some time. Both my parents never had a job other than working for themselves. So over the family dinner table every evening was discussion around P&L, growth, hiring, firing, people, difficult conversations, successes, and also as a family we navigated the 2008 financial crisis as well. And through that period of time, I was lucky enough to achieve my boyhood dream of becoming a professional racing driver, which I achieved at the age of 16 and had a 10-year professional career and retired when I was 26. And that's when I met my co-founder in a coffee shop. And we started to talk about problems that could be solved. And this is one of the problems that we're currently solving. And that's how AeroCloud was born. And I'm delighted to say now we're nearly 60 people and 60 customers globally since then. And we've raised nearly $18 million of venture capital backed funding. So delighted to be in the position I'm in. I'm still eager to get to work every morning. I sleep very little and it's a lot of stress, but at the same time, it's incredibly enjoyable. And as long as I keep getting better and I keep enjoying what I'm doing, then I think there's no better place to work than AeroCloud.
Yeah, it's fun being an entrepreneur. So how do you become a professional race car driver?
Interesting thing about racing is, and I think that a lot of people will tell you that it is, but it really isn't. My dad was growing up in the Lake District. Back in the day, had to go to work early because of the loss of his father, and always just desperately admired motor racing. And when he was in a position where he could fund himself and to try and develop a career himself, he was never able to. He was effectively too old. And that sort of dream lived on in him, and then latterly through me as a 4-year-old, started just as a pure hobby. Anything with an engine, every single weekend would be racing, sleeping in the back of a van, traveling up and down the country. When it sort of transitioned from a hobby to a profession was around the 2008 financial crisis, where our family couldn't afford to keep it as a hobby anymore. It turned into a profession out of the fact that I couldn't effectively do anything else. You know, I had a great education, but this was my sole goal in life and something that I felt really deeply about. And the reason why I retired, sort of at the other end of the question, if you're interested, is that I wasn't getting any better at 26. I was much better at forming relationships on the commercial side of the motorsport business, making far more money from the commercial side of racing than I was from the actual driving. And after a couple of very difficult conversations, it became clear that I wasn't getting much better and I needed a new challenge. And that was the decision to part ways with the sport and sign away that chapter and start a new one as a CEO of a startup.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've been successful at either. I like the fact that you just transitioned careers, and that was probably a tough thing to do, but it sounds like you made some decisions that were right for yourself. So within your current business, you know, how are you seeing cloud computing? How do you see the value of this stuff that comes back to yourself and your clients? Efficiencies, optimization of resources, those sorts of things. And how does it relate specifically to your work with airports?
So airports are one of the most complex environments that one would ever come across. I mean, we have retail, we have security, we have government, we have processing, we have massive amounts of data, we have hundreds and hundreds of important, pivotal, mission critical stakeholders. And what's really interesting about airports on the flip side is that they haven't necessarily caught the cloud bug until the last sort of couple of years, right? And that's where we came in, is that we gave an alternative to tin, accessibility to all, therefore scalability and rapid implementation to get airports onto the cloud. And we've never looked back. And our nearly 60 customers have never looked back also. And it's amazing to think that we're bringing customers from not just off cloud onto cloud, but from spreadsheets and club together pieces of software that aren't necessarily achieving operational efficiency for them and actually deducting from their ability to grow. So what AeroCloud provides, and I'm sure we'll get into it, is a breadth of services that operate via the cloud that give an enhanced cost efficiency, rapid implementation, scalability, both growth and reduction. So take COVID as a classic example, pre-COVID, then COVID, then post-COVID, and the ability to collate millions of data points and relay them to the decision makers in real time. And that has been, a major contributing factor to the success of our clients and something that they have proven to be very happy about. And we've sort of created an evangelical tribe of customers that start to recommend us now to other airports, and we haven't looked back. And our job and my job as the custodian of the company is to encourage airports to think outside the box, encourage them to speak about their problems, encourage them to say, your problems aren't unique and they can be solved, and then give them a platform in order to do that on a modular-based system that they can grow into over time. And that's really our MO.
So there's kind of two aspects to way to define value of cloud for airports and other problem domains as well. So there's the hard value, in other words, the efficiencies you get from the cost savings immediately and not supporting your own hardware and software, or the ability to kind of shift that burden to somebody else to manage. And we can see those at the bottom line at the end of the month, each month. But there's the soft values that are much more harder to define. The ability to get to an agile state, the ability to have scalability and flexibility that you didn't have before. Those are much harder, I think, for people to understand. How are you defining those for airports?
It's a great question. And even though in my last answer, I said that, problems are not necessarily unique per airport or compared airport to airport, there are different use cases across each one of the customer sets that we have, usually with regards to territory, location, state, for example, or local governing bodies and their relationship with cloud. But the less tangible stuff that we find that is a commonality between the problems that we're solving and the customer need and the use case for cloud is information to all. That can be as simple as having a mobile application that doesn't require an internet connection, can work off 5G anywhere on the apron, from home, from holiday, whatever it may be, to give data-driven decision makers the ability to collate that data and act on it, either in real time or proactively to help them solve problems of the future and plan for those. And that scalability and that ability to amass data and check it out and use it in real time is just something that wasn't possible by a per user license, fixed base, DC, tin infrastructure type scenario for them of previous.
Yeah, it seems that airports would be a good use case for something that changes quite a bit, and certainly something has to deal with compliance, almost probably more compliance than, say, financial institutions. So are you dealing with different levels of compliance in different situations from country to country? And is the cloud providing kind of the ability for anybody who's dealing with compliance to adapt to different compliance and changing regulations and changing laws, which seem to be coming fast and furious now?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a huge part of the discussion at the bodies within airspace, within airline, airport relations. So it's very much a topic of conversation here and very much something in its infancy. But what we can say at AeroCloud is we have the ability to move a lot quicker than our legacy competitors. That has meant that the deployment and the pace that we can change, try new things, sandbox and do other things would not be possible in the legacy way. And that's something that we've really grown to appreciate by the way that we're set up in the latest technology. We use a lot of AI and machine learning. We use a lot of complex models and a lot of decision making in our own instances that provide the airport with the ability to trial and error certain projects, engage with, share information with all in real time. And that's something that's been a major advantage to AeroCloud, and one that we look to maximize in the coming years.
It seems to me that the dynamic workload need, would be a key advantage. So it's not only just flexibility to be able to change things, but airports, they can be extremely busy or extremely not busy based on the time of day, and they're processing passenger and flights and baggage information, things like that. The processing load would spike up a very few hours of the day and be down other hours of the day. Are airports taking advantage of the dynamic scalability and the ability to provision and deprovision assets that they need to support, kind of a changing load? Are they able to find cost advantages in doing that?
I think, be totally honest with you, absolutely not. We speak with probably 100 airports a quarter, and that has definitely not come up at the moment. I do know that it's happening in other industries. And I think what's interesting is that would have a direct reflection on the cost of the provisioning, the cost of the monthlies with regards to what you discussed with scalability and the cost of the cloud, and would really come into play at much, much larger airports than AeroCloud, my business, are used to dealing with. So we specifically target airports that are regional, and because they are the airports that are growing as fast as we are growing as a company, and there are far more of them. We're trying to reduce the amount of decisions that they have to make about the sharing of the information and make it as easy as possible for them, because the gain of sharing that information is far outweighs the ups and downs that you outlined there.
So how are passengers seeing this? If I'm a passenger, I'm using a regional airport, your technology is there, your expertise is there, you've changed the state. What am I noticing that's enhancing my experience to make it more productive, more enjoyable? What are not only the users, I guess, the users' customers seeing?
But I think we need to start on sort of understanding what AeroCloud does. So first off, we centralize all airport data into one platform that we call the Intelligent Airport Management Platform. From that platform, we modularize out, whether it's baggage, flight information display systems, which is the FID screens that you would see as a traveling passenger, common use, and passenger processing, which is the ability for multiple airlines to use the same desk to check multiple passengers in at any time and point in the day. BRS, baggage reconciliation, weight and balance, which is how many bags are on the plane, what the plane weighs, fuel predictions, passenger facility charge predictions. And then we've also got computer vision pieces inside of the airport. So we have a complete end-to-end operating system that a regional airport will be the single source of the truth on. When you accomplish either a greenfield or a brownfield deployment and you start to own the end-to-end as a vendor like AeroCloud, shared ownership becomes a big piece as you start to integrate with either our competitors or integrate with other companies that are doing things that we are not in the best interest of the airport. But when you understand how much data you've got, what you're collating, and what data is of value to you, then you can start to tweak things within the airport that make the passenger experience better. In terms of in cloud in isolation, the real-timeness of the data that we're able to collate from the sources that I just discussed, and the other sources that we're either buying in or getting from the FAA or etc., and combining them into our platform, the passenger gets much better real-time information. If the passenger gets much more better real-time information, they have the ability to know exactly where they stand when they are going through the various processes within the airport. And that relieves passengers from worry, that relieves passengers in order to get them to spend, which is the airport's MO, right? Is the ability to extract as much money as possible from a passenger through their transition through the airport and give them a great experience. And that experience is sort of different at different jurisdictions. So, in the US, they are heavily weighted on security times, processing passengers in a timely manner to get them to gate as quickly as possible in order to increase the experience that they have, which contributes to their local GDP, right? So a better regional airport means better education, means better investment, means that people are traveling from that destination and getting a more real world view, bringing back fresh ideas, et cetera, et cetera. An airport is truly impactful. And then we flip back onto a European owned airport that are predominantly owned by private entities, that the main concern is revenue from passengers and processing them as quickly as possible to get them into the terminal to spend, and also potentially also growing using AI, which we do for them to optimize their spare capacity so that they know where the funnels, bottlenecks, et cetera, are within their process as they process the passenger. And both in turn increase the passenger experience, but most importantly, on the airport's behalf, we're increasing the revenue per passenger. And I think that that's the most important thing that what we offer gives them, our customers.
Yeah, and you think the objective of digital transformation in general, using cloud or not, is the ability to enhance a customer experience to a point where there's an innovative differentiator as to what that experience is. And it's funny, you're kind of dealing with a classic business problem where there's choices. I mean, where I live, I can go to a regional airport, which is an international airport, and they're kind of equidistant. But I'm typically going to choose a regional airport because there's some convenience and the experience there is better. There's fewer people, it's fewer flights. But if I'm able to use it in a more optimized way and get a better experience, even if I'm paying a little bit more for the flight, I'm going to make that decision. And I think we're moving into a world where, that's going to be carried out not just to airports, but everything, the way in which we, pick food, the way in which we pick transportation, the way in which we pick places to live. All these sorts of things really kind of boil down to our ability to understand the customer and provide a better customized experience, which is going to provide him or her with the ability to discern value in a particular service, in this case, airports. Am I getting close?
Yeah, 100%. And then amplified by that, a vendor like AeroCloud is solely focused on mass deployment, which is not possible, obviously, on legacy methods. So, we're acquiring customers at such a rate of knots that we are now seeing customers connected to customers. So the next stage of AeroCloud is further enhancing the passenger experience, is connecting the route that you are traveling to by owning the operating system or owning and operating the system on behalf of the airport between the two origin and destination that you are flying on that route. And that's really important because, those sort of ghost delays, those confusions in gate, those backed up because of poor planning and staffing, and that is eradicated when two airports get connected to each other because the wealth and richness of the data that comes from the airports being on the same platform dramatically increases. And with that real-time nature, that access to better data is giving the airports better decision-making, and that in turn is increasing the passengers' experience. When you talk about the choice as you as an individual, it's something that we see an awful lot, a mass exodus to regional airports moving away from the large hubs, just purely because they have the choice now. And the rise post-COVID of the success of the ultra low cost carrier and the fact that we're already at pre-pandemic numbers and exceeding them in some markets is absolutely incredible to see that people are voting with their feet and going for something that's much more convenient. However, this does put stresses on those regional airports that are used to processing 1 million that have to go to processing 5 million in a matter of years. So that's hiring, that's deploying processes, moving to an operating system like AeroCloud, and also educating the passenger on their expectation of the experience in hand. And that is something that's truly interesting as regional airports start to become a lot more powerful than the hub airports, not just with the airline-airport relationship, but with the airport and customer or passenger relationship. And that's where AeroCloud is definitely hanging their hat. It's a market dedicated to the regional airports that are growing much faster than the large hubs, that are involving the passenger throughout the airport more. Now, it's not to say that we won't work with large airports. So I see that in the next couple of years, that AeroCloud will be at every airport in the US, for example, not just the 54-ish to 60 customers that we have today.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's where the growth's going to be. And you guys are well positioned to take advantage of it. So where can we find out more about your company and yourself on the web?
So we're aerocloudsystems.com, our main sort of channel to communicate with potential hires, industry thought, leadership, think tanks, idea sharing, et cetera, is LinkedIn. We are AeroCloud Systems on LinkedIn. I personally attend all of the major conferences. I would like to think that I'm extremely accessible and I've got time for as many people as possible inside of my schedule of running the business. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome any feedback on, what we've discussed. any challenges or any information more about our system and the operating system that we're putting into these airports and delighting our customers with.
Yeah, I love this story. I love the fact that you guys are really getting into a niche market, probably something that's underserved, and bringing the value of technology to them so they can scale their business and also serve their customers better. At the end of the day, that's why this stuff exists, and that's why we talk about cloud and other technologies. Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to like us, rate us, and subscribe. You can also check out our past episodes, including those hosted by my good friend Mike Cavas. Find out more at DeloitteCloudPodcast.com, all one word. If you'd like to contact me directly, you can email me at dlinthicum, LINTHICUM, at Deloitte.com. So until next time, best of luck with your cloud journey and stay safe.
Thank you for listening to On Cloud for Cloud Professionals with David Linthicum. Connect with David on Twitter and LinkedIn, and visit the Deloitte on Cloud blog at Deloitte.com/US/Deloitte-on-cloud-blog. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, go to Deloitte.com/about.